You know, my dear, people often say that when you grow old, your house becomes quieter, but nobody ever warns you how painfully loud the silence can be when the very people you love are the ones who leave everything behind. I had a son, my only child. His name was Armand. He used to tell me I was his whole world, and maybe I truly was, until his world began revolving around someone else, someone new in our lives, someone who quietly started taking everything I held dear, without even asking. It was a Sunday morning when everything changed. I woke up to the familiar sound of birds outside my window, the same little birds that had visited my garden for years, chirping like they always had, like nothing had changed. I made my tea, held the warm cup in my trembling hands, and waited for Armand to come downstairs. He always came late, but that day, he didn't come at all. At first I thought perhaps he had gone for a walk with his wife. She was new to our home, beautiful, polite, always smiling. I tried to like her. I really did, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't read, something cold, untouched by love or care for the home she had entered. Hours passed. The house began to feel strange, too empty, too still. I wandered from room to room, calling out his name softly, hoping this was some cruel mistake. When I finally stepped into the living room, my heart sank. Everything was gone. Not a few things, not just old furniture. My sofa, my cupboards, my husband's old rocking chair, even the photo frames on the walls had vanished. Only empty marks and dust remained, silent witnesses to the life that had been taken from me. For a fleeting moment, I thought I had walked into a stranger's house, but the lingering aroma of my morning tea reminded me this was my home. I whispered to myself, maybe they're renovating, maybe it's a surprise. But even as I said it, a cold, crushing truth settled into my chest. Something inside me shattered. I dialed Armand's number. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I tried his wife's phone, switched off, both of them unreachable. Then, I noticed the envelope lying neatly on the floor near the door. My hands shook as I picked it up. There was no name, no letterhead, just my address written in my son's handwriting. I opened it, hoping desperately for some explanation, some reason why everything was gone. There were no words of love, no apologies, no explanations, only a single line, cruel in its simplicity. Don't worry about us, Ma. We'll send money once we're settled in Paris. Paris, the city of lights, romance, and adventure. And here I was, left behind in a house stripped bare, surrounded by silence and drowning in memories. I sat on the cold floor for hours that day, hugging my knees to my chest, staring at the emptiness around me. Every corner whispered a story. The marks on the wall where my husband's photograph used to hang, the missing table where Armand had once done his homework, the empty shelf where my wedding albums rested, all gone. Everything was gone, except me. People often say betrayal feels like a stab in the back, but abandonment, leaving your own mother with nothing, not even a word of goodbye, that is a quiet, slow ache. It seeps into every corner of your heart and erases what you thought was permanent. I wandered through the house, touching the cold surfaces, remembering every laugh, every argument, every meal we had shared in this home. My husband's chair, the little cupboard where Armand hid his toys, the kitchen counter where I had baked cookies for him, all vanished, replaced with emptiness that made me ache as if a part of me had been ripped away. And yet, my dear, even in that silence, I realized something. Life doesn't end when people leave. It doesn't end when betrayal strikes. It changes. It shifts. And if you listen closely, it teaches you things you never wanted to learn. If you're still listening, my dear, don't forget to subscribe. This story isn't just mine, it's a warning, a confession, and perhaps a little comfort for those who have also known the sting of being left behind. Because what I'm about to tell you next is the secret that no one knew existed in this empty house, and it will change everything you thought you knew about my son, about my family, and about the life we left behind. After that day, the day my home became a hollow shell, I didn't know what to do. I wandered from room to room like a ghost. Every familiar corner seemed to mock me with its emptiness. I thought I knew my house, every nook, every cranny, but now it felt like a stranger's place. Then, as I was passing by the old sideboard in the corner of my living room, something caught my eye. A small, almost invisible drawer I had forgotten existed. It was tucked away under the main cabinet, the kind of place a mother keeps for herself. I had never really used it, not for anything important, or so I thought. My hands shook as I opened it, and inside, I found a bundle of letters. Letters I hadn't seen before. Letters addressed to me, but never delivered, never spoken about. They were from Armin, and not the Armin I had known. They were full of confessions, doubts, and secrets he had kept buried for years. I remember sitting on the cold floor, holding the letters like they were the last lifeline in my world. My heart ached with each word I read, words I had never been allowed to hear until now. Words that painted a picture of a son I didn't recognize, a son who felt trapped, misunderstood, torn between duty and desire, love and resentment. He wrote about the nights he had spent thinking, about leaving, about the quiet anger he had felt when he thought I didn't understand him, about the dreams he had of a life in Paris, away from the shadows of this house. And in every line, there was guilt. Guilt so heavy it nearly crushed me. And then I saw it, a small, folded note at the bottom. The handwriting was hurried, almost desperate. I never meant to hurt you, Ma. Please forgive me. I had to go. I needed to find myself. I read that line over and over, and something inside me cracked. I didn't just feel betrayal anymore. I felt the full weight of love lost, of a mother's heart breaking in silence while her child ran toward his own happiness. Tears streamed down my face. I hadn't cried like that in years. Not for my husband, not for the passing of time, not even for myself, but for my son. Yes, for Armin, the boy I had raised, the boy who had once held my hand and promised he would never leave. And yet, even through the hurt, I began to understand him. I could see his struggle, his fear, his longing to escape. It didn't make what he did any less painful, but it gave me perspective, and strangely, relief. Relief that I wasn't imagining things, that the letters confirmed he had loved me, even in his own twisted way. I spent hours that day in front of that drawer, reading every letter, letting my tears fall, letting my heart ache, and letting my mind piece together the person my son had become. I realized then that life is never as simple as it seems. People make choices, often selfish, often cruel, but choices are always born from something deeper, something hidden, something unspoken. The letters also revealed something I hadn't expected: a secret about his wife. She wasn't just a companion, she had been influencing him for months, shaping his decisions, convincing him that leaving was the only way to find happiness. That knowledge stung. It was hard to face the truth that the betrayal wasn't only from my son but from the world that had crept into his heart. I sat there until the evening, clutching the letters to my chest, feeling both broken and awakened. I realized that my life had changed, yes, but maybe I could still find a way forward. Maybe the emptiness of my home wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the beginning of a story I hadn't yet fully understood. If you're still listening, my dear, don't leave yet. There is more to this story, more secrets buried beneath the surface, more truths waiting to be uncovered. And what I'm about to reveal next will show you just how far someone can go when they chase their dreams and leave their family behind. Because sometimes, the heart's deepest pain uncovers the most hidden truths, truths I never thought I would see in my lifetime. After hours of reading Armand's letters, I felt like I was piecing together a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Every word revealed another layer of the person he had become. Someone torn between love for his mother and the desire for freedom. Someone trapped by guilt. Someone who made choices that would leave me hollow. But what I discovered next, my dear, it broke me in a way I never imagined possible. I decided to search the house, hoping, maybe foolishly, that there were still traces of my family left. I walked slowly, touching the walls, the counters, the empty spaces where our memories used to sit. And then, I noticed it. A small envelope, hidden behind the loose panel under the stairs, tucked away as if it were never meant to be found. I picked it up. My hands trembled, not from age, but from anticipation and fear. Inside was a small stack of papers, folded neatly. They weren't letters this time. They were documents, photos, and receipts, proof of a life my son had kept secret from me. The first photo I saw made my breath stop. It was Armin, holding hands with his wife in front of a travel agency, smiling at the camera, passports and tickets on the counter. But there was something else in the photo, something hidden in the background. A man, unknown to me, whispering in his ear, holding a folder that looked official, almost calculated. My heart pounded. I had always known my son loved Paris, dreamed of leaving, but this felt deliberate, planned, not just a youthful whim, but a carefully executed choice. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, he hadn't just left. He had been guided, influenced, maybe even pushed by someone else. someone who had promised him the life he wanted. I sat down on the floor, clutching the papers to my chest. My mind raced. How could he have hidden all this from me? How could the boy I had nurtured, protected, and guided make choices so cold, so unforgiving? As I sifted through the documents, I found bank transfers, bills for shipping furniture, receipts for moving services, all dated weeks before he even spoke a word about Paris. Every piece confirmed it. The house had been emptied in secret. Every piece of my life that I cherished, gone, taken without a word, without a goodbye, and the most painful discovery. A note I almost missed, tucked under the receipts. My son had written it in tiny, hurried handwriting. "Ma, I love you, but I can't stay. Don't try to stop me. I am sorry. One day, maybe, you'll understand," I cried. Not just tears of anger, not just tears of betrayal, but tears of heartbreak for the boy I had raised, the boy who could no longer stay in the home that had once been ours. The more I looked at the evidence, the more I realized something even deeper. My son's departure wasn't just about escape, it was about identity, about chasing something he felt he could never find here. And, as painful as it was, I began to see the truth. Sometimes, love alone cannot keep people where they don't belong. Yet, my heart ached with the knowledge that he had abandoned me, left me in silence, surrounded by empty rooms and memories that had become ghosts. And still, a part of me understood him, even as I hated the choice he had made. I sat there for hours, clutching the photos and letters, letting the tears fall freely. I spoke to him aloud, even though he wasn't there. "Armin, why? Why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth?" My voice broke, and I felt the weight of years of love, care, and devotion pressing down on me. I realized then that life doesn't always give answers. It gives pieces, clues, and sometimes painful lessons that you are forced to learn too late. But I also realized something else. A mother's love doesn't vanish, even when her child leaves. It endures, quietly, painfully, and endlessly. If you're still here, listening to me, my dear, remember this: the heart is complicated, and so is betrayal. What comes next in this story? The secrets that unfold, the choices revealed, will show you just how far someone can go when their heart is torn between love and desire. Because sometimes, the hardest truths to face are not about what others did to you, but about what they were forced to do by life, by circumstance, and by the choices they made in the shadows. Days passed after I discovered the letters and hidden documents. I felt hollow, but I also felt a strange resolve forming inside me. I couldn't stay buried in sorrow forever. I needed to know the truth. I needed to understand why my son, my Arman, could abandon me so completely. I found myself reaching for the phone, calling the number of his new apartment in Paris. My hands shook, my heart raced, and every instinct screamed at me not to dial. But I did. The line rang 3 times before a voice answered, soft, cold, and unfamiliar. His wife. She spoke quickly, politely, almost rehearsed. And then, I heard it, Armin's voice. My son. He sounded different, older, wiser, perhaps, but distant. Not the boy I had raised, not the one who used to crawl into my lap when the storms outside scared him. "Ma," he said, almost hesitant, almost afraid. I could barely hold back my tears. "Arman, why? Why did you leave me? Why did you empty our home, take everything, and run to Paris?" There was silence on the line, the kind of silence that stretches and twists your heart. And then he spoke, carefully, almost painfully. "I had to, Ma. I couldn't stay. I felt trapped. Everything here, the memories, the expectations, it was suffocating. I'm sorry." I could hear the sorrow in his voice, but it didn't erase the pain. "Suffocating. Do you know what you did to me, to this house, to every memory we shared?" My voice shook, cracking under the weight of years of love and betrayal. He sighed. "I know, Ma. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could have a better life there. We thought we could start over. Just the two of us. I didn't know how to tell you." The words cut me, but they also opened a window of understanding. I realized that my son hadn't left because he hated me or because he didn't love me. He left because he was searching for something he didn't know how to find here. But, Armin, all of this, the letters, the hidden plans, selling the furniture, leaving me in an empty house, did you even think about me for a second? My voice was trembling. "I did, Ma," he said softly. "I thought about you every day. I cried myself to sleep thinking about how I would break your heart. But I didn't know how to stop myself. I needed to go." Hearing him, I felt a strange mixture of pain and relief. Pain because he had abandoned me, relief because at least now I could hear the truth, feel his remorse, and know that he hadn't acted out of malice. We spoke for hours. He told me about Paris, about the life he and his wife were building, about the loneliness that haunted him even as he chased his dreams. And I spoke about the emptiness I had felt, the nights I cried alone in a house that had once been filled with laughter and love. For the first time in weeks, I felt a connection again. Not the same as before, not the warm, familiar closeness, but a fragile bridge of understanding, built from pain, honesty, and the unbreakable bond of a mother and her child. By the time the conversation ended, I felt exhausted, but also lighter. Lighter because I had confronted the truth, lighter because I had heard his voice, his remorse, and his love, even if it had been expressed in the cruelest way possible. And as I hung up, I looked around the empty house once more. The walls were bare, the furniture gone, but the memories remained. They remained because no one can take your past, your love, your heart. Even when people leave, even when betrayal cuts deep, the love that shaped you endures. I sat down on the cold floor, clutching the letters and papers once more. I realized then that life doesn't always give closure in the way we want. Sometimes, closure comes quietly, through understanding, forgiveness, and acceptance. If you're still listening, my dear, remember this: even when life takes everything from you, even when those you love most leave, there is still a way to find peace. The heart may ache, but it also learns to endure, to forgive, and to love again, because the hardest confrontations often lead to the deepest understanding. And that understanding
After
is
that
sometimes
long
the only way
conversation
with
with
Armand. I sat in my empty living room for what felt like hours. The house was silent again, but this time, the silence was different. It wasn't mocking me, nor was it filled with sorrow. It was a quiet reminder of everything I had endured and everything I had survived. I thought about my life, the years of love, care, and sacrifices I had poured into my family. I thought about my husband, who had passed many years ago, and the home we had built together. And I thought about Armand, the boy, who had once run to me with scraped knees, the young man who had left everything behind to chase his dreams. Yes, he hurt me. Yes, he left me with empty walls and hollow memories. But over time, I realized that my anger and pain didn't have to define me. They didn't have to chain me to the past. Life had taken something precious from me, yes, but it had also given me something no one could ever take: resilience, wisdom, and an unshakable heart. I began to walk through the house, room by room. Each empty space told a story, not just of loss, but of love. The marks on the walls where Armand had grown up, the spaces where our furniture used to stand, the forgotten shelves, they were reminders of a life well lived, a life that had shaped me into who I was. I sat on the floor where the sofa had been, holding the letters and documents I had discovered. I read them one more time, and this time, instead of tears of heartbreak, I felt a mixture of sorrow and understanding. My son had acted out of desperation, longing, and a need to find himself. He had made mistakes, yes, but he had also loved me. That love, hidden beneath his choices, had not vanished. And then I thought about forgiveness. I realized that forgiving Armand was not about condoning what he did. It wasn't about forgetting the pain. It was about freeing myself from the weight of anger, of resentment, of sorrow that could have consumed me. Forgiveness, I learned, was not for him, it was for me. I smiled softly, even though my eyes were wet. The emptiness around me began to feel less like a punishment and more like a canvas where I could rebuild my life, redefine my home, and remember the beauty in both love and loss. Days turned into weeks. I started filling the empty house with small things I loved: photos of my husband, flowers on the windowsill, books I had been meaning to read, and little reminders of my own life outside of my son's choices. The house, once hollow, slowly began to feel like mine again. Armand and I kept in touch. His letters and calls were fewer than I had hoped, but they were honest. Every conversation reminded me that our bond, though stretched, was still there, a bond forged by years of love, strengthened by hardship, and preserved by the understanding that life sometimes requires painful choices. One evening, I sat by the window, sipping my tea, and looked out at the sky. The sun was setting, casting warm, golden light across the empty rooms. I realized that life, no matter how cruel or unexpected, could still be beautiful. I realized that my heart, though battered, was strong. And I realized that love, even when tested by betrayal and distance, could endure in ways that were quiet, patient, and eternal. To anyone listening, my dear, if you have ever been abandoned, betrayed, or left behind, remember this: your heart is stronger than you know, your love is deeper than the pain, and your life, no matter how empty it may feel at times, is still full of possibilities. I have learned to let go of bitterness and embrace the lessons of life. I have learned that even in the darkest hours, there is light. I have learned that my son's choices, as painful as they were, do not define my worth or my strength. And so, I sit here today, in the home that was once emptied, surrounded by memories, letters, and love. I forgive, I endure, and I embrace life once more, because a mother's heart, though it can break, can also heal, grow, and continue to love endlessly, fiercely, and without regret. Life does not stop when betrayal strikes. It continues, quietly, patiently. And sometimes, it teaches you that the greatest strength lies in your own heart. And now, my dear, that is the story of my life, my loss, and my resilience. I hope that by sharing it, you see the truth I have learned. Even when the ones we love leave us, the love we carry within ourselves is never gone.